Hi, James Himm Mitchell here, and in this video I'm continuing my series on Kathy's Grand Tableau, this time picking up where we left off with the last video, which was Kathy's portrait spread. So in this video I'm going to be doing what I call counting ground and taking a line of 5 from that portrait spread and reading those cards. So stay tuned. And here we are with the cards on the table, and the deck that I'm using for this series is the Lenormand, and I'm picking things up right exactly where we left off with the previous video, which I will have a link to in the description box below. And in that video, we took a look at Kathy, who has been the subject of this series, and her card in this particular tableau is, of course, the Lady card. And what I did was I did a portrait, which is the 8 cards that are surrounding the significator, and I extracted them from the tableau and took a look at those to see what they might inform us as to what's going on around Kathy concerning her situation. So now I ended that video by saying that I have a process of extracting a line of 5 from this particular portrait spread, or any portrait spread that you would do, depending on whatever the topic card is. So I'm going to show you right now how to take those 5 cards out, and then we will readjust the line and read those cards to see what kind of additional insight or advice they would offer Kathy regarding her situation. So what you want to do is you want to start in the middle, and the first card for the 5 cards is the significator or the topic card. So I'm going to remove this card. Then what you do is you count off by 2. So this card was card 1, so 1, 2, then this card becomes the second card, and then 1, 2, this is the third card, 1, 2, this is the fourth card, and 1, 2, this is the last card. So we have the line of 5 with the 5 cards, and so what we're going to do is now, so we're going to take a moment to remove these cards and create the line. Alright, so I've readjusted the line, and so now we are looking at the line that has been created by the process which is called counting round, and this now becomes the line of 5. And so we have, the first card is the Lady card, going with the order that they were removed. The Lady was the first card, followed by the Bouquet, then the Crossroads, the Scythe, and the Tree. So now I always read the line of 5 with the middle card first, because this presents us with the central issue or the focus. And so here we have Crossroads. So for me, Crossroads represents choices and decisions. So the central issue here is about choices or decisions about the path. In keeping context with Kathy's question, her question was twofold. What did she need to know about the direction of her relationship with her husband Dave, and they are in the process of a split, which we talked about in the previous video with the Scythe, and the Scythe is still here in the line. So she wanted to know about the direction moving forward with that, as well as, regardless of whether she and Dave stay together or not, what was her direction going forward. So this is perfect as the central issue. So again, it represents choices and decisions about the path or direction. For me, the Crossroads just represents, in a nutshell, it represents choosing the best course, because this card can represent like having options, alternatives, because it has more than one path on it. So out of a number of choices, like which is the best choice, which is the best path, which is the best and right course of action. So I'm seeing that as the central issue. It could also suggest too, going with the idea what I just said about a number of choices and options, it could just represent that she's being faced with, especially since she's facing all the other cards in the line, that she's faced with either a couple or a number of options and alternatives. And then the last thing, in conjunction with her question about the situation with Dave in particular, this card could be saying too, it could go either way. It could go like they work things out, or they don't, and they each move, you know, on their own way. They each go their own separate way. So I'm seeing that as the crossroads. And then what I do is I take the cards that are immediately flanking the center card and look at those as a pair. So here we have bouquet and scythe. So as a pair, they could represent the sudden or unexpected surprise, because going with the idea here that bouquet being the first card in the pair, that represents for me like the subject. So here we have surprise, and then this is describing the surprise, the scythe. And so that could be sudden and unexpected, because those are some of the keywords that I have with that. Another pairing possibility here could be a painful surprise. Again, going with the idea that this is the noun or the subject, which would be the surprise, and then the scythe is describing it. And scythe in this particular case can represent something that is painful. So it could be a painful surprise. It could also be a surprise, going with the bouquet, that leads to pain and hurt. And so the surprise here would be, you know, the idea of when Dave came to Kathy and said that he wanted to leave, and he did that. It just came for Kathy on the receiving end of that. It came out of the blue and was unexpected and, of course, quite sudden. So that could be some possibilities for that. And then we could look at the outer pairing of lady and tree. And this would tell us, whereas the two cards, bouquet and scythe, can tell us more about the subject card. These two, for me, can usually tell us something about how the situation could most likely end up. I look at these as like the summation of the situation going on. So in terms of, you know, a painful surprise, then it could be, for Kathy being the lady card, tree here represents healing. And in this particular case, I would see it as, you know, a woman, in this particular case, Kathy, facing healing. So I'm seeing that as a possibility, like a woman facing healing, because she's facing this direction. So here at the very end, you know, even though she's going to have to make some choices and she's in this place of being hurt, the end result will be that there will be some healing that takes place. Now, the other thing about the tree is, when we're talking about timing, since this is the outcome, the tree represents something that is going to require time and patience, because a tree is something that takes time to grow and develop. So she will at some point, and I just realized that's a pun on the scythe, she will at some point get to this place of healing, but it's going to take some time. It's not going to be an overnight process. So I'm seeing that. Now, some other things we can do is we can take lady and bouquet and pair those, and then this becomes one way to describe Kathy. And so bouquet in this sense could say that she is an attractive or beautiful woman, because bouquet can represent something attractive and something beautiful. It could also represent, you know, a surprised woman, you know, and as a result of being told that her husband was leaving her, that would make sense. And then the last thing could be a woman faces a surprise because she's actually looking or facing in the direction of bouquet. So those are some possibilities, keeping in context with the situation and the question. That's how I would read those. And then on the other side, we have scythe and tree. And so these could be read as pain or hurt that leads to healing. And then with that, again, the idea here that it's going to require patience and that it will take some time. So then what we can do is we can read the entire line going from left to right. I call that forward narration. So a possibility here, keeping in the context of the situation and the question, I have this as a possibility. A woman with the lady is faced with, and going with the idea that she's facing all the other cards, is faced with selecting, because bouquet can represent selection, selecting the best course, which would be crossroads, from a variety of options, which would be the combination of bouquet and crossroads, for a pain, going with the scythe, that needs to be healed with the tree. So I'm going to say that again. So the sentence could be, a woman is faced with selecting the best course from a variety of options for a pain that needs to be healed. And then with that, I'm seeing in the moment that we have crossroads insights. If we look at those as a pair, then it could be, the reason being for this is the approach to a split or a break, or that the choices, going with the center card, the choices are sudden and unexpected. So it would be, sudden and unexpected choices. So I'm seeing that as possibility of the entire line being read. So now what we're going to do is we're going to shift to the playing cards, because if you've watched my line of 5 videos for some time now, you know that when I do a line of 5, I look to the image and the keywords associated with the image as one way of gaining information, and another way would be the playing cards and seeing what they offer in terms of what I call the dynamics. And so we'll do that right now. Alright, and so now for this section of the video, we're going to turn to the playing cards to see what additional advice they're going to offer us. And so for the playing cards, we have the Ace of Spades, we have the Queen of Spades, we have the Queen of Diamonds, we have the Jack of Diamonds, and we have the Seven of Hearts. And so what I do is, keeping with the idea of staying with the focus on the central issue being crossroads, I look to the first 2 cards in the line and then the last 2 cards in the line, and they offer us like one side of the issue and another side of the issue. So what I do is I take the playing cards and I add the numerical values. So the Ace of Spades is 1 and the Queen of Spades is 12. So 1 and 12 is 13. So the 13th card for me in the deck is the Child. So here on one side of the issue is Kathy is faced with the idea, or the choice or options of starting over, because Child represents something new, something beginning, the start of something. So that would be how I would read that. On the other side, we have the Jack, which is 11, and the 7, which is on the 7 of Hearts, so 11 and 7 is 18. And then the 18th card in the deck is the Dog. So this is very interesting. So on one side of the issue, we have Kathy possibly deciding, like, starting over, starting something new, moving into the next phase, the next chapter of her life, that kind of energy. And then Dog is very interesting because it can represent, like, partnership. So it can represent, like, being a partner. So on the other side of the coin here, we have her possibly deciding that she may want to stay with Dave regardless and try and work that out, because this card, like I said, not only is it about a partner or a companion, but it can also represent things like being loyal and being faithful. So I would see that. Now, if we look further here, for me, this card can also represent the idea of getting help or support. And so if you go here with the idea of scythe being pain and the tree being healing, then if Kathy is to work with maybe a healer, maybe with a therapist to help her with the pain, then Dog would make much more sense, because that'd be like help, support, and then helping her if she decided she was going to stay with Dave out of loyalty, let's say. She decided she wanted to stay with Dave, then her work really would be about healing the pain and hurt, possibly surrounding with trust that's been broken. If you read Scythe and Dog as a pair, if you go with the idea that Dog is trust and then Scythe is a break, then this would be about repairing any trust issues, So I would see that as a possibility. But again, here it would be saying too that it would be either for her to start over, start something new, or to remain loyal and faithful and try to work things out with Dave on this side. Now, going with this side here, if we look at the 3 cards in question, they're all from the suit of spades. And so suit of spades in cartomancy, but in particular with Lenormand, if you notice that most of the cards from the suit of spades are attached to like beautiful things, like the bouquet, the lady, the child. They're all very nice, beautiful cards. So this particular combination is asking Kathy to consider, you know, what's the most attractive option going here with the two cards. What's the most attractive thing for her? What looks to be the most appealing? What would serve her? Because sometimes the suit of spades for me is about service. So what would serve her? What's in her best interest? She may be making some decisions here out of loyalty, you know, but maybe at the expense of herself. So that may be something to consider. If she is going to, you know, go with, let's say, with what's being presented on this side, is it because she's doing it for her and she knows that that's something that she wants to do, or is she doing it out of some perhaps misguided sense of loyalty? So that's something else to consider that I'm seeing. So the last thing we can do is we can add all the playing cards across. So we have the ace of spades, so that's 1. Queen of spades is 12. We have another queen with the crossroads, that's queen of diamonds, so that's another 12. Then we have the jack, which is 11, and the 7 from the 7 of hearts. And that gives us a total of 43. And so since there are 36 cards in the deck, anytime I get a number over 36, I add the digits together. So 4 and 3 is 7. And so the total card here is the snake, because that's the 7th card in the deck. And the snake represents a complication. That is my first go-to meaning or keyword for this. So it represents, yes, this is a complication. There is an entanglement here. And so for Kathy, no matter what she chooses, snake is saying that it's going to be a long and winding process, because the snake is a reptile that coils. So it could just represent, it's not going to be an easy shot. It's not going to be a straight line. There's going to be twists and turns. There's going to be complexities and complications along the way. So it's just letting her know that it's not going to be, you know, smooth sailing. And the other thing about this here, if we go with the idea of being hurt and in pain, then this emotional side of the snake card can represent having to deal with issues of jealousy, envy, you know, perhaps maybe feeling a sense of being betrayed, because they go with the idea of the snake having a forked tongue. So, you know, betrayal, and maybe the sense of either being lied to, like she feels like, you know, how long has Dave been feeling this way because he didn't say anything was wrong to her, so she may feel like she's been lied to, or worse yet, she may be feeling like the whole entire marriage to Dave was a lie. You know, that idea is popping into my head. The idea, like, you know, when some people say, well, you know, was any of this true? You know, have I been living a lie? You know, that kind of energy. So I'm seeing that. But my first go-to here with snake, that no matter what the choice is, keeping in context with the center card here, no matter what the choices are, there's going to be some complications, and that it's going to be a long and winding process. And as I'm saying that, the other thing about snake, because we have a lot of queens here, so that could also, adding to the idea here, that the queen of clubs in particular with the snake card can represent like the other woman. So again, it reinforces the idea that Kathy may have some sort of suspicion that there may be another woman involved. And then with the idea here with 3 queens, that maybe there's been maybe more than one woman involved and she doesn't know. So, but the other side of that is that she could see this as, you know, being or becoming a divorced, especially with the scythe here, either a separated or divorced woman, and her ideas about like what that would look like. Because the inset here of the Queen of Diamonds on the crossroads, for me, can be like a Capricorn energy. I see this as like a Capricorn person, and so that could be the idea here. With, for me, one of my associations with Capricorn energy is like being concerned about one's public image, you know, one's public standing, you know, how you are seen in a public light. So the idea here about, you know, being separated or divorced, that may carry some kind of significance to her and maybe not in a positive light. So that's just something else to consider. But this is how I would look at the hidden dynamics through the playing cards in this line of 5. So now we can wrap things up. We've looked at the central image and the keywords associated with that. We looked at the playing cards for the hidden dynamics and any additional information. And the last thing we can do is look at the numerical values of the cards for what I call the essence card. And so now we're back. We looked at the line of 5. We've looked at the playing cards. And so now we're going to look at the essence card. So we're going to add the numerical values on all the cards in the line and come up with the essence card. So we have 29 for the lady. We have 9 for the bouquet. We have 22 for the crossroads. We have 10 for the scythe and 5 for the tree. That gives us a total of 75. Again, it's over 36, so I'm going to add the 7 and the 5 together, and that adds to 12. And the 12th card in the deck is birds. So this is the essence card, and birds is a card that typically can represent communication and conversation, and so that is one of the things that has happened. Dave and Kathy had a conversation about their relationship, which is also another meaning for me about the birds, because there are 2 birds on the card, or at least in this particular image there are 2 birds. So for me that can represent a partnership and a relationship. So there was a conversation about a relationship that played right into the central issue or concern with the crossroads, because one thing led to another. As a result of having that conversation, then Kathy had found herself with needing to make some decisions. So seeing that as, the conversation or communication about a relationship. Now with that, on the emotional side is for Kathy, especially if she's dealing with healing on the other end of this, coming out on the other side of it, healthy, then the birds could be one of the options being offered to her is about, pursuing counseling, because I sometimes see this as a counseling card. And, counseling is a relationship, again, which is one-to-one. You're having a conversation with another person about your concerns, your issues, and trying to get some help with that. So I'm seeing that as a possibility here with Crossroads, again, being in the card that represents options, alternatives, and choices. Now, going with the emotional side of birds, it could be going with the counseling and the emotions that need to be healed would be possibly a sense of frustration, frustration about the relationship. It could also be about, being nervous and anxious about the future. Now, kind of like your world's been turned upside down, and so now you have a sense of being nervous and anxious about what the future might hold, which is, of course, very natural, and having to do that. And then the last thing would be helping dealing with issues regarding sorrow, because I sometimes read the birds as sorrow. Sorrow having to do with the ending, possibly, of this relationship, and having to grieve that loss, having to mourn that loss, and looking back on it, having sorrow about, like, is there something that maybe she could have done differently in the course of that? Because again, since there are 2 birds on the card in a relationship, each party has some level of contribution and responsibility for the beauty in the relationship going with the bouquet, and then the hurt and pain in the relationship going with the side. Each person has, some level of responsibility and contribution with that. So having to take a look at that, as a possibility. So I'm seeing that. And then, so the other thing, because I had to stop and think, like, what else did I want to say about this card? So the other thing about the birds, going with the idea here, with I said about snake, and then, the idea about image, sometimes in this context, then birds becomes a card of, like, speculation, so again, that could be speculating about the future, and speculating about the relationship, like, can it be saved? Can it be salvaged in any way? That kind of energy. But it can also be the speculation of others, because sometimes birds, with the idea of communication and conversation, it could be about, like, chatter and, people talking, and with that, the idea of, like, gossip and rumor and speculation in that regard. So it could be like having to deal with the idea of, like, ooh, people are talking about me. Ooh, like people are talking about our situation, or the idea of people talking and going with that, carrying it further, like, well, what are people saying? You know, and getting wrapped up in that. You know, so there could be some concern about that with birds. And so again, that would be something that maybe looking at that more deeply with the help of a counselor or a therapist would be beneficial to Kathy. So that is how I would read these cards in this 5 of line. So I'm going to end things here and wrap this up. So I am James Himm Mitchell. I want to thank you for sharing the space here with me. I hope you found this particular process with a portrait spread helpful and informative if you're working on a grand tableau on your own. And I hope those of you who have been following the series because you have been interested in looking at my process in terms of a love, romance, relationship type question, I hope you found it helpful and informative in that regard, looking at things in that kind of lens. So I hope you appreciated the information in that regard. So my intention for the next video is that we're going to be doing another portrait spread, but this time I'm going to be looking at it from a topic card, and that is going to be the ring, and seeing the cards that are surrounding the ring, because one of the questions was about the marriage. And so we're going to look at that because ring for me is the card that represents marriage. So again, I'm James Himm Mitchell. I'm signing off. I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and until we get together in the next video, take care.